So
So
Stephen,
I'll keep it shut.
Yeah.
is your unbelief in the self-identity claims of Jesus Christ reasonable?
Oh, wow. I think so, yeah.
Okay, lay it on me.
Well, I mean, the self-identity claims come from a book written by unknown authors, so that's going to be a big hurdle.
Well, what is that referring to?
The Bible,
Well, we actually know who the authors are.
not of the Gospels.
Oh, you are quite mistaken, my friend. The mistake that you're making is that because in the Gospels, because it didn't say I, Matthew, wrote that. Does that mean we don't know? The early church was in a position very well suited to know who the authors were, in spite of the fact that it wasn't identified. Okay? It wasn't only until around the 4th century that we have the first recorded instance of just somebody questioning the authorship. So we do know who wrote it. Now, I can agree with you that there are some people who want to challenge that historical precedent, right? But the fact that they want to challenge that precedent, it doesn't follow from that necessarily that we don't know through common knowledge of authorship that Matthew wrote it. I mean, I'm sure that we could find an example of somebody famous who wrote something who didn't identify that it was themselves, but through common knowledge, we know that they wrote it. Right?
Yeah, but if we're talking about a modern person, we could go ask them, right? Like, I can't go and ask Matthew, did you write this part of the Bible?
There are instances that if I were to, be interested in looking it up, I can find that there would be plenty of instances where, let's say, an essay or a short story or something where somebody, um, let's say, wrote anonymously or wrote under another pseudonym, where they never publicly acknowledged that pseudonym was themselves, but we know through common knowledge that they wrote it. But nobody disputes that. The point is this. Do you think that within toward the end of the 1st century and the 2nd century, they were not in a very close position to know who wrote what has become to known as the Gospel of Matthew?
You know what? The early church may have known who wrote which Gospels. I could see that there an argument there because there's like what 200 years or so
There was,
maximum
there's,
between written and being
yeah,
in the church.
there's unanimity as to who wrote the Gospels only until the first instance where a question was raised. Now, so when you reject the Bible because you say, well, unknown authors, okay? The fact of the matter is the Bible is a package deal. It's a composite worldview. So your position is that it's reasonable. When I say the identity claims of Jesus Christ, by extension, this includes outward what he recorded to say, and it includes the writing of the biblical authors. So when you reject the Christian worldview that it's reasonable, when you're rejecting the identity claims of Jesus Christ, it is the same thing as rejecting the Christian worldview and including the Bible. So, how is anything reasonable in a not Christian worldview?
Through the methods of logic and reason.
Well, there's a number of questions I could ask you. Does logic require certain prerequisites?
I mean, it requires the universe to exist, reality, I
Okay.
suppose.
Does logic require that it be absolute?
Within our perception, yes.
Okay.
Well, no,
And
not
in
oh, actually, probably even beyond that, probably.
Okay, does logic require that in a world of stuff that there be some correlativeness and connectiveness between particulars or discrete states of affairs?
I'm thinking about that one. Give me a moment here.
Take your time. Does logic require that there be some correlativeness between anything?
I think yes. Yeah.
Or the converse, could logic be a viable thing in a world where nothing individually is correlated or connected in any way, physically or conceptually, to anything else? Would logic be viable?
No.
Okay,
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
right. So, in a world, in the Christian worldview, whatever logic human beings possess at a fundamental level, this is an endowment from God that is reflective of the mind of God. Now, when you dismiss that, okay, and logic requires a world where there is various levels of unity among the diversity of things, since you reject that Jesus Christ is Lord and Creator Himself and that He institutes and secures the unity among diversity, is the unity that is a prerequisite for logic, is it real?
Sorry. Real in what sense?
That it's actual as opposed that it's simply an imaginative state?
So, am I imagining reality as being connected, or am I not doing so?
Whatever unity at various levels that you and I will, I'll use the word presuppose, or is implicitly there, in everything that we say, is that unity real or is it just simply imaginative?
It's real.
Good,
It's real.
good. Do you accept that Jesus Christ is the one who imposed that?
No.
Good. Then what makes it real?
What makes the connections between all things real?
What makes whatever unity among diversity of things real? Since
Hmm.
it's not Jesus Christ, then what is it?
I'm not sure there has to be a thing that does that, because
Oh,
like there is connections between real things. Even
okay.
sorry.
So is each instance of unity a se, which means to be that it exists in and of itself. It is absolute, invariant, and internal.
Could you unpack that a little bit for me? I've heard the "ah say" thing before, and I still don't fully understand it.
A se is just a theological term meaning that whatever possesses aseity means it's self-contained, non-derivative, non-dependent, okay, absolute within itself. So if you're going to invoke that there's a state of affairs, okay, does this state of affairs exist derivatively, or does this state of affairs or entity, um, is it eternal and absolute within itself?
Derivatively.
Okay, well then you're going to, in order to explain how it's real, what makes it real, as opposed to you're imagining it that it's real. You do know what nominalists are, right?
I have not a clue.
A nominalist is somebody who doesn't believe that universals are actual, that it's just a human convention.
That's an interesting thought,
Right?
but there are things which appear to be universal at the very least. Whether they are or not might be
They're
a
real.
harder question.
How is unity among diversity? Now, I'm not questioning you because I don't believe that unity isn't real. I certainly believe that it is. I believe it's God given and God sustained. But you don't believe that. So I want to get down to brass tacks in your worldview, since you claim you can exercise logic, and you already admitted that logic requires that there's going to be unity among diversity. What makes the unity real? Is the unity God given and God sustained, or is the unity a brute fact where it is simply invoked to exist without external or internal justification that it exists?
I'm not sure. I would probably go more towards it possibly being a brute fact than it being God breathed, just because being God breathed would be an additional fact over God's brute
Oh,
facts.
you- yeah, well, okay, but you see, here's the problem now, right? Um, in the Christian worldview, in the case that the Christian worldview, since God is the creator and sustainer of all things, and everything is operating according to his purpose and redemptive plan of history, everything there is therefore interpretable. Okay? And by interpretable, I don't mean like, that the silly example where a custodian leaves a mop and a bucket right next to an exhibit in an art museum, and people come along and they see the bucket and the mop and they think it's another artist's rendition. And they
There's
put,
actually a case of someone doing the opposite and bringing what was actually art out of a museum. It's hilarious.
right. Okay. And they go, well, what this means to me is, well, that's not what we're talking about interpretability. Okay. Interpretability means that we can express in part, if not in whole, what something actually is ontologically. So if something is a brute fact, either directly or indirectly, it's uninterpretable because there's no fundamental, identifiable, defensible reason as to what or why it is. In the Christian worldview, right? Whatever you look at, like for example, I'm holding a an AirPod case in my hand, or if I'm holding a piece of metal in my hand right now, or a rock,
An
all of the
AirPod case could be all of those things.
well, what I'm saying to you is these things are created things, right?
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
although God
Well,
Himself did not institute
the rock
AirPods,
wouldn't have
but
been
He
a create. Oh, depends on the rock, I guess.
so everything that exists, whether it's been reconfigured by man into a new tool, are created facts. Okay, that anything that's not God. Okay, now if you reject that view, then nothing is classified as creaturely or created. So all you're left with is they're brute facts, either directly or indirectly. It makes no difference if you give concentric, proximate explanations as to what it is. If the final contextual explanation is itself brute, everything that it contains is brute. So you're left with an array of brute facts. So if everything are brute facts, can you be reasonable about anything?
I wouldn't say that everything is brute facts. I would say there are some brute facts, and there are also some levels of randomness to our presentation of the universe.
No.
And those can't
Ran-
be brute by definition.
what randomness are you talking about? Okay, there's at least two different kinds of randomness. So there are certain things that happen that we will attribute to randomness in that we don't have one or more immediate things that we can identify that coincide to bring about the event. So if I say that a particular ping pong ball is selected by a lottery machine from a plexiglass box, we say that that selection was random. Would you agree?
Not necessarily, but I'll say yeah for the conversation.
Well, yeah, because you see, we don't know what all of the precise conditions in terms of the heat, the molecules, air pressure that it got sucked up into the machine. So when we get down to the really fine details that we don't have access to, we say that certain outcomes are random, right? But what we don't mean by that is that it just spontaneously occurs for no collective reasons whatsoever.
I'm referencing the second kind of randomness. We know quantum fields have randomness within them
No,
that
you don't.
pops in and out with no identifiable reason.
Oh, you don't.
That's what the quantum
You do not.
scientists say, at least.
No,
What
what
class
at a
was
quantum
saying a little different.
range things that happen that they cannot pinpoint why it happens. Okay. And that's because either we haven't um, gone far enough yet, or we never will be able to identify what is the consecutive reasons. Now, from your point of view, it might be the case that it is randomness of the second sort, but how would you demonstrate that? You couldn't. All right. But here's the problem. In your world, how is anything not random of the second sort?
Well, I did start saying that there are some determined things, and then there are also some random things.
What
So
dictates that? Is it the mind of God?
no,
Oh, then what fundamentally dictates why anything is, can be, or cannot be?
those brute facts and those random facts I mentioned would be the ones dictating how
Like
those things exist, how our universe exists as it is.
even I don't think you're getting this, okay? Once you stipulate that a fact is brute, it is said to exist without external or internal reasons as to why it is.
Yeah, just like how God doesn't need a reason for his existence; he just exists.
No, sir, you're not getting this. This is a common mistake. No theologians refer to God's aseity as a brute fact. God's existence in and of himself is necessary. He's simply self-contained and is non-derivative. Okay?
That's
There
how you defined a brute fact earlier, though.
no. It is something that is said to exist without external or internal explanation as to why it exists. God's existence is not external. His existence is explained by himself. He is without beginning.
Well, I
Okay?
would say those brute facts are also without beginning.
But then they wouldn't be brute facts then. Okay? So then are you then asserting that there are some things that are absolute in and of themselves? They're unconditionally non-dependent, non-derivative, and eternal?
Yeah.
And on what basis could you justify that?
Well, there must be some eternal thing, right? I don't think nothing could ever exist. It seems like an impossibility to me.
Not the
So,
issue. If you are going to invoke that a particular is itself absolute and eternal, what is your justification that that particular is?
so we're talking about the concept of some particular fact, and how would I know whether it's infinite in
Do you
past or not?
do you invoke that which you are communicating to us uh, is not derivative of God, but it is neither a brute fact? What would that fact be?
Sorry, I got lost there for a second. Could you repeat?
What fact are you putting on the table that neither derives from the mind and the purpose of God, nor is it a brute fact? What fact is that?
I would probably go with the fact that I exist, because that's not brute, it's derivative of my mind.
No. Your consciousness, um, did it begin to exist?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay. So did your consciousness exist from something external?
Yeah.
Okay, well then we're done. Then it's derivative. Therefore it's not eternal. It's not self-contained.
No, but it's a fact I can't be wrong about, though.
No, you're not focusing, okay? I ask for you to put on the table a fact that neither derives from the mind and purpose of God, which you reject, nor the fact in question is brute. Okay?
So
Now,
my existence does not depend on God, and
if
it's
it
not brute.
if it's neither created nor brute, then the fact in question itself must be absolute within itself. What fact is that?
How is my existence not absolute to me? That sounds like absolute within
That
itself is fulfilled by that.
the parameters of the question. That's kind of like um, when somebody says, "Well, that's true for me, but not for you." All that just simply means is they're saying, "I believe it." So I want to know is what singular fact is absolute within itself, and by absolute I mean that it is unconditionally non-dependent and non-derivative. What is it?
Okay, no, I see what you're saying there. Like my existence would be dependent on or sorry, my belief that I exist would be dependent on my existence. Um, hmm.
Now, just for the record here, you and I are not agreeing on a bunch of stuff, but you're conducting yourself in a very mature and intelligent fashion, and Darth Dawkins is not getting angry because you're not trolling.
We did have a bit of an angry match the other day, but hey, we get over it. We get through it.
Listen, sometimes people who are acquaintances and on a friendly basis can have a spat, but every interaction that we've had, except for one, we've gotten along. Okay, I only got upset with you once, so
Everyone can have their bad days. On the subject, though, I'm not sure what fact could possibly be fulfilling your requirements there.
okay. So that means for you then, you are in a realm of brute facts, right?
Well, brute facts and random ones, sure.
Okay. Well, first of all, when you say random, they don't have any identifiable explanation. The consequences that is that they're uninterpretable. You have no interpretability for those putative facts, and it results in unintelligibility.
Well,
Now,
that's what the random facts are for. The
I,
random facts would add intelligibility.
when I'm saying it's unintelligible, so for example, if we have a Burger King cheeseburger, when I say that it's uninterpretable and therefore consequently unintelligible, I am not saying that if I say to an atheist, "Would you like a Burger King cheeseburger?" and he says, "Yeah, I'm really hungry," that statement is not semantically intelligible. I am saying from a world view level, it's unintelligible. I am not saying that semantically it is unintelligible. So you are in a world with an array of brute facts, right? Is there anything that is not a brute fact in your world?
The random facts, the ones I can't explain.
No, you're not understanding. Those would be brute too.
But their
Are there any,
definitions change by their own definitions.
gotta focus. Are there any facts that you can tell me ultimately on a grand scale, on a worldview level, as to why metaphysically and fundamentally something is?
I'm really not sure, Darth. Because like if I try and say reality, I don't think you're going to take that. If I
No,
try
that
and say my own self-existence, you've already not taken that.
well, listen, to say reality is not an answer at all. It's the go-to response when people don't know what to say. It's an uninformative and it's also incoherent upon examination. Okay? So, is there any fact in your model of reality, in your not Christian worldview, that has an ultimate explanation for why it is?
An ultimate explanation for why the fact exists.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure. There will be some ultimate thing, but I might not know about it or have the ability to know about it.
Asking you about your certitude. Do you mentally possess even one fact that you can point to that is ultimate? See, you don't have one, do you?
I have presented two, and I'm still a little bit unclear as to how they don't qualify.
You're
You've brought up some bruteness and some potential problems with that,
you brought up your consciousness, but you said your consciousness is derivative.
but I,
So that gets eliminated.
but I am 100% certain of my consciousness, though. Like it definitely exists. I can't be wrong about
Okay,
it.
here's the problem with that, okay? You're beginning to sway into solipsism here. Okay? Now, I could easily dismantle that as not being coherent, okay? Which I can and will do if necessary. But you're missing the question. Is there anything in your world that is ultimate? And by ultimate, I mean that it is singular, absolute, invariant in terms of its essential qualities, and that it is the source and basis of everything that is not itself.
Well, there must be such a thing, I think, by
Now,
definition.
there must be. I ask you, do you have something that is identifiable and defensible?
No.
Okay, so the consequence of that is for every fact that you invoke, those facts, individually or collectively, will be um, directly or indirectly brute facts. Every single one of them. Do you understand?
I think I see what you're saying.
Do you accept, therefore, in your rejection of the Christian worldview, your rejection of Jesus Christ's self identity claims, that he is the creator, he is the savior, and he is the Lord, and he calls you to repentance and faith in him? When you reject that worldview, all you are left with is an array of brute facts. Do you want to dispute that?
Given the definitions we have, I'm not sure how I could dispute that.
Okay, so there is no dispute. Okay? So now, when you claim that your state of unbelief is reasonable, there is no reason or logic to put on the table because
Well,
every
there's pragmatic things,
no, 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 because pragmatic things entails correlativeness and connectiveness, but there's nothing identifiable that imposes that.
but I could be pragmatic about those pragmatic things being connected.
No, you're begging the question right now. Pragmatism presupposes that there's various levels of unity among diversity of things, and that there is some correlativeness and connectiveness between one particular and another. So
Hey, Darth.
this is why I brought up the issue of ultimacy versus things that are contingent. You have nothing that is identifiable or defensible that is ultimate that imposes correlativeness and connectiveness, do you? Then you cannot invoke pragmatism, my friend.
No, not even pragmatically. That was a joke. I'm sorry, Darth.
No. Pragmatism, at least in part, presupposes that some things work in a certain way. That presupposes identity over time,
Well, I do have an
the causal
experience
principle.
of things being connected. Like that's definitely
Well,
true.
no, sir, listen to me. Here's the problem. Okay. When you say you have an experience of that, what you're talking about is that you are having certain consecutive mental states, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, are all of the consecutive mental states that you refer to as I, me, whatever, are they unified by something concretely?
Concretely?
As opposed to an abstract unification.
No, they're concretely
Those
like connected to my
those,
consciousness.
those discrete mental states at T1, T2, T3, 4, 5, okay? Are they unified in some way?
Yeah, they're unified to my consciousness.
Okay. And so how do you know that that's begging the question.
That's actually what I wanted to ask you about, Darth, if you don't mind.
Yeah, just wait a
While
second
you're Yeah,
because
yeah, no problem.
I don't mean to be rude. I want you to jump in here, but I'll have a Joe Biden moment, all right?
No problem.
So, see, what you're saying is they're unified, okay, but you that's how you're defining your consciousness. Your consciousness equals the unification of all of the uh, um, discrete the chronology of mental states. But what imposes that?
Physics, I guess.
Well, that's another problem. You haven't shown that there's anything that imposes that unity, other than the fact that you believe it. You see, in the Christian worldview, okay, God creates us as beings, and that our mental states are unified by our being made in the image of God. God is the one who imposes the unity among diversity of things. But when you claim that your consecutive mental states are unified by your consciousness, you're just telling me definitionally. What you're saying is that your consciousness is the set of consecutive mental states. Yeah? Is
Yes.
that
Yeah.
that is the set, are all the members connected concretely? Or are they connected abstractly, which you are then referring to as you
I'm going to say both,
or the I?
actually. There is a conceptual connection and also a literal one.
Okay. What is it then that fundamentally imposes actual unity among diversity in your world? Do you remember when you already answered that question? You said you had nothing identifiable, but now you're singing another tune.
Well, but I can identify how physics reacts and how it could be holding my
Oh,
consciousness together.
and you don't have the luxury to invoke physics. Okay? Shall I go over that again? Why you don't?
I have to go rotate my laundry, so if you wouldn't mind giving me a minute.
No, we'll continue it another time. So there you go. We had somebody who was attempting to intelligently and in a mature fashion vigorously disagree. And we have a great discussion.